I would like to steal his example about Airbnb. As Peter explained, at the beginning they were small, they had top talents, right? But when you have top talents, what happens that your company starts growing, right?
Right.
And sometimes it starts growing not only weekly or monthly, but daily. And actually our other guest will tell you more how to handle the situation when from 10 people you grow to 750 and more.
In a very short period of time. And before that, I want to say a special thank you to Ligaya, because she's the one that made many of the speakers to come here this time. So Ligaya, thank you, and please come on stage.
Woo!
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. This is my first time in Lithuania. Oh, there's some notes here. All right. Despite having worked in the tech industry for a long time, I still love paper. So you will see this. Am I breathing like a dragon, or are we okay? It's okay? All right. So this is the first time I'm going to give this talk today. I'm quite excited. I hope you are too. Let's start. So I guess I wanted to ask you a question first, or maybe a few questions, about some experiences that you've had. And obviously you can't tell me the answer, but maybe think about it in your mind. A few of these things have happened to me. Firstly, I walked into work one day, and across the room there was an open desk. It was empty. The person was gone. And we had no idea where this person went. Like, what happened? They used to sit right there. And everyone is on IM, and they're speculating, like, did this person get let go? What happened? Did they leave? There's all this drama. Everyone's, making conjectures. Different situation. There's that guy that's always in these meetings, and he's got the loudest voice, and he's full of ideas, and he talks all the time, but he doesn't really do anything else but talk. And somehow, he gets promoted before anybody else in the team does, just because he's the most vocal. Why is that? Or a different situation that you may have encountered when there's a customer support person, and they're attacking the ticket queue, and a ticket comes up, and there's somebody that's really unhappy, and a customer is just so irate, and that customer support person kind of goes above and beyond to make it right for that customer. And it goes completely unrecognized by leadership. Nobody says, hey, good job, thanks for tackling that. And it sends the message that these type of efforts don't matter in an organization. So I'm thinking these things have probably happened to you. And if they have, then they're symptomatic of a broken culture. Did it have any effect on the morale and the productivity of your team? I'm sure that it did. How did you feel? I felt totally frustrated. I was thinking, like, I don't care how fancy our Aeron chairs are, or like how many games of ping pong I beat my CTO in, or how like local the produce is, or how great the food is. Just give me fairness and recognition and appreciation on a plate. I'll take that. That's the kind of culture I want. So, a wise man, Peter Thiel, said that a startup is a team of people on a mission, and a good culture is just what that looks like on the inside. So a culture is the norms and behaviors and attitudes of the people in this group. But the tricky thing about culture is that it just grows, whether you realize it or not. Culture is kind of what happens when you're launching a new feature or you're pitching a new product, and things just start to percolate. But actually, as it turns out, the best cultures are intentional. They are not accidental. Patty McCord was the former chief talent officer for Netflix, and she created this culture doc, this seminal culture doc that's been viewed millions of times on SlideShare. She says that culture is determined and reinforced by who is rewarded and promoted or let go. A company's values are not what's stated on the wall, but they're the behaviors and the skills that are valued in each employee. So what is a good culture? Well, because different organizations and different products have different goals, you can't say this is what's going to work for everybody. But you know that a culture is good simply because everyone is doing their best work. Their best work. If you want people to do their best work, we've got to focus on culture. But so often, culture just is an afterthought. It's secondary to product. And only really when discordance sort of runs rampant in an organization and employees throw up their hands and they leave, does leadership finally pay attention. And I've seen this a lot. So, as these guys mentioned, I've been working in tech for the past decade. I started at Yelp when it was 10 people. Yelp, by the way, is a website where people can write reviews about local businesses. And it's not yet here in Lithuania, but hopefully it will be soon. Initially, my role was to manage the office. So culture was what I thought about every day. And then after about a year, I started doing marketing and launching new cities. And during my 4.5 years at Yelp, we grew to 500 employees. Since then, the company IPO'd, and it's now worth, $5 billion plus. And then after that, I actually joined Airbnb. And that was to lead the community in offline marketing. And it was 12 people then. It was tiny. Like, we had just moved the office from the founder's apartments. This was in San Francisco. And the company was growing incredibly quickly. I mean, I think most of the time there, we were hiring 2 or 3 people a day. It was crazy. I mean, how do you onboard and indoctrinate people into a culture when you're growing that rapidly? It was wild. I still have whiplash, I feel like, from going that quickly. But now I advise and I invest in about a dozen startups. Emily, who you heard from earlier, Forage, is one of the companies that I'm proud to have invested in, as well as Circa and Munchery and True & Co., and things that you can see on the board there. So today, what we're going to do is kind of explore some of the common challenges that emerge at the different stages of a company that have to do with culture and the unique ways that startups have tackled them. So I'm going to show you some neat products. I'm going to tell you some insider stories. And if there's a product that you might hear me mention that I don't go into explanations about, just write it down or tweet me later. I'm very active on Twitter nowadays. Anyhow, let's do this. Boom. Yes. So when I first joined Airbnb and I started telling people what the company was and kind of what our mission was, people looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. They were like, Ligaya, are you serious? You want me to open my house to a stranger? You want me to let a stranger sleep in my bed? Like, you're out of your mind. And I heard that a lot. All of us did in the beginning. And we were a little bit dismayed. We were, we didn't, I guess we could have listened to them, but we were really bullish that this was a version of the future that we wanted to see. And so we didn't shut anything down. We said, this is going to work. Because we believe deep down, our why, is that we believe people are fundamentally good, and we wanted to live in a world where people could trust strangers, where people would welcome them into their homes, where they would have a really cool, unique travel experience that was more enriching than, say, a hotel. And fortunately, millions of other people believed that too, but we didn't know it at the time. So you can imagine how disheartening that was. So in the beginning, it's pretty exciting, though, because the companies are just getting off the ground, and you don't have any resources, so you can't really pay people full market salaries. So you only, by selection, then get the people that are really, really excited about your product, or that are very, very excited about the mission. And they're usually really hungry and scrappy and kind of problem solvers and builders. But things are a little bit disorganized, a little bit chaotic, which is all right. Because for a founder, to have a bunch of people that are really excited about your mission can be really galvanizing. But how do you start building this team? Well, Peter talked a lot about it, so I won't go into much detail, but I'm going to give you some fun, punchy little stories. So I guess one thing before I go into that, The most important thing to hire for. People always say like, well, what have they done before this? Tell me about their resume. And whenever anybody says that, I'm just like, ugh, it doesn't matter what somebody did before. It matters what they want to do. It matters how hungry they are and how committed they are and how passionate they are. So please, 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 when you leave this room, if you get nothing out of this talk, remember this slide. Never, never say again to try and convince people why they should work in your company, you should work for us because we're tackling the world's most challenging problems. Every company is going to say that. Or you'll be working with the smartest people. Well, you're a founder. Of course you're going to think your people are the smartest people. Or your stock will be really valuable in the future. I hope that's true for you, but for 90% of the startups, that's just not true. Instead, think about who these people are. What do they want to learn? Do people on your team like them? Are they fun to work with? Do they have the skills, or could they learn the skills where they could meaningfully contribute to your cause? And this is critical. They have to have internalized and have resonated your vision, because these people are going to be executing the vision for you. They're going to be the ones on the stage, like Peter said, and you have to trust that they're going to make decisions with the best interest of your company at heart. And they'll do that if they have the same priorities and values as you. Well, how do you know, right? How can you tell if somebody is a culture fit? Here's a trick. So every candidate at Zappos gets this question when they interview. On a scale of 1 to 10, how lucky are you? I actually got this question at Airbnb because Joe Gebbia borrowed it from Tony Hsieh. That's what happens. People just tack it on. I said I was a 9. I don't know about you guys. Tweet me, Ligaya, how lucky you are. So there's actually a really seminal study by this guy named Richard Wiseman that shows that what we call luck actually boils down to the ability to notice an opportunity and have the confidence to act upon it. So this is actually quite a good filter. Another one I like is a Goldman Sachs question that Brian at Airbnb has incorporated now, which was, if you were shrunk to the size of a pencil and you were stuck in a blender, how would you get out? And my favorite answer is, I would erase the blender. But I don't know. You could ask whatever you want. But I think you'd get a sense of how creative and fun somebody is by just asking them some kind of off-the-beaten-track questions. Cool. Yes, this is a good one. Another passion test. Take a page from Bonobo's book. Basically, you've already tested for their competency and you're confident that they're really hardcore, and maybe you want to give them an offer. I say don't give them one, give them 2. Give them 2 offers. And the reason why is, well, say the first offer is X amount of cash plus equity. The second offer should be less cash, double the equity. If they picked the first one, would you hire them? What about the second one? Yes. You want somebody that's going to opt for equity first because they believe deep down that you're going to make it and they're going to commit to it. They're going to be feeling invested and feeling ownership over your company. I love this one. And then lastly here, when building a team, I think most importantly, know what you're hiring for. And when you hire that person, only give them ownership over one thing. I think people tend to romanticize the wearing multiple hats in startups. People go, oh, I did everything in the beginning. It was so fun and so crazy. I think it leads to chaos. I think that you should assign people one thing. Defining roles always reduces friction. And I know it's tempting to hire those jack-of-all-trades and figure out where you can use them later, but it brings people's territorial sides out and it never works well. Don't do it. Don't do it. OK. Oh, good. You know that guy? So Medium is a publishing platform that was started by one of the Twitter co-founders, Ev Williams. And this is a quote by the head of People Ops over there, Jason Sturman. And he noticed that there was a bunch of weird things going on with the team. They were about 20 people, and people were having motivation problems and whatever. And he didn't really know how to tackle it. So he said, you know what, maybe I'm just going to ignore all of the problems that have to do with work. Like, people are going to come and tell me, Jason, this person is doing this thing, and this person is doing this thing. He's like, I don't want to hear about it. Tell me about your family. What's going on with your kids? How's your house? Did you close on it? and asked them more questions about their life. And all of a sudden, he said, suddenly all these issues were just dissolving. I swear, it was like a Jedi mind trick. So instead of ignoring the kind of root of the problem, which is like people's internal states, which have much more to do with the rest of their lives than work, but were manifesting in work, he ignored the symptoms. So many startups are actually questioning this top-down management structure and the dynamics within an organization. And among the most radical is actually Medium. They employ this product called holacracy, which basically means that the company has no managers. There's zero direct reports. Instead, they organize people in these circles around key projects where there's different domain leads, but there's no direct reports. And people are playing with, Valve is a game company. They do a similar thing where people have to lobby other people to get them to work on their projects. Something to experiment with in the future if you guys end up starting companies. So in this new notion of management, leadership just sets the priorities and mentors and helps employees develop their skills. But it's actually the mutual accountability and collaboration that leads to progress. Yes. In talking about management, I think we should really visit the idea of motivation. There are, I would say, old world ways of thinking about motivating people. And I guess the basic way really comes down to pleasure and pain, fear and joy. Like, you need to do a great job or you're out of here, I'm firing you. But it just doesn't work. People aren't motivated by pleasure and pain. We're much more evolved beings now. There's a guy named Dan Pink, and he did a great TED Talk and wrote a book called The Truth About What Motivates Us. It's called Drive, actually. I think Peter actually put it up on the screen. And after decades of research, he found out that people have an innate drive to be autonomous and self-determined and connected. And when that drive is liberated, people achieve much more. They're much more productive, and they lead much more fulfilling lives. So organizations should really focus on this when managing human capital. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And when people are in their sort of flow states and they're partaking in this, recognition goes a long way. It doesn't have to be just public recognition, like calling somebody out in a company meeting. It can be a little handwritten note or a one-liner email that just says, hey, good job, or that was really insightful in the meeting. And remember to be specific. Praise is important, but if people don't know deeply what they're being valued for, it's not going to motivate them. All right. So as you're growing, obviously there's more and more employees, and those employees can't always talk to each other. It's going to be harder and harder for them, in fact, to get on the same page. The correlation here is, the more employees you have, the longer time it will take for information to disseminate, if it even disseminates at all. Sometimes there's going to be a group of people in an organization and they're going to know everything and everybody else will be out of the loop. How does that make people feel? Not great. So I think we should systematize news. We should have regular company stand-ups or calls with every department, new employee introductions, and of course the company metrics and the progress should be really transparent. You can also include stuff from customer stories or stories from the field, or do it in writing form and just send out a monthly bulletin. I remember working at Yelp, we would go to the company meeting, and at the top of 3 of the slides, there was this big confidential, because our traction and revenue numbers were actually revealed to the entire company, which is unprecedented. I'd never been to a company meeting before where the C-level execs showed everyone at the company what was happening on a financial level. And it gave us a sense of ownership and transparency that was quite valuable. Another thing, make direct communication easy and efficient. So you guys probably know about HipChat. It's kind of taken over the world. The new trendy product right now is called Slack. They've got basically, 13,000 companies already, and they launched very recently. People use it on average for 10 hours every day. It's known as like the email killer in Silicon Valley. And basically, it's got this really beautiful UI. And this very accessible kind of canonical archive search, it's very cool. Check it out. All right. So say we're growing really quickly. It's catching on. The revenue's going up. Hiring is really steady. You need operations people to come in and kind of set some process and make things efficient. And what you're going to notice is that there's a hierarchy that emerges. And because these hires aren't necessarily bought in because of your vision, maybe they just need a good job and they think you're a good opportunity, the passion index isn't going to be so high. It's all right. But roles are going to get a little bit more structured. Things are going to get more defined. They're going to be narrower, and this can be hard for early stage people because they liked a little bit of chaos and they liked being able to touch on different types of things, or at least have transparency into what's happening. And they go, hey, like, this isn't what I signed up for. And there's attrition. So new classes come in and old people go out, and it's sort of the natural course of things. As an early person, it kind of sucks because the people that were there with you in the beginning that you loved so much leave, and they galvanized you every day because you were building something together. But that's some of like the emotional ups and downs that you just have to roll with. And it's growing so quickly, you can't even keep track of anybody anymore. Like, you don't even know the GM, in one of your cities from, a 300 by 300 pixel photo or something. How do you keep track of everyone? Do you know what this number is? Anyone? Shout it out if you do. It is. Nicely done. It is Dunbar's number. So this is the number of relationships someone can maintain. There's actually a scientific basis for it. And when your company far exceeds 148, people's emotional investments just go down like that. And it's kind of a bummer to be walking down the halls and not recognize these faces. So Zappos decided to do something about it. They have this thing called a face game, where when you log into their computer system and you enter your password, somebody's face pops up. That woman, it's really, the opacity is very low. But anyway, you're going to see somebody's face and then a multiple choice question of their name. And if you get their names right, then you get entered into some sweepstakes where you win prizes and stuff like that. But it's a great way to get to know your fellow coworker. So they actually productized this stuff. That's how important it was to them. Yes. So what you're going to see is sometimes different cultures develop, right? You'll have one office in New York, one office in Paris, and they're going to have their own flavor because of the people in each of those offices. But you want it to be cohesive so that when somebody comes over, it feels like your company. And I think Yelp had a few good solutions for tackling this, to sort of ensure that people didn't feel like strangers. Once a quarter, we had these small lunches of 4 to 6 people that were from different departments. This actually included the CEO and all the execs too, where a salesperson, an engineer, a product person, whatever, would all go to lunch together. People that didn't really know each other, and they got to share kind of what they were working on, their different projects, for cross-functional kind of pollination. And when an employee had a question later on for that department, they would obviously go to that person. Another thing that we did that was pretty fun, Michael designed this, actually, and Michael will be speaking after lunch, so stick around. Once a year, we used to have this thing called the Yelpy Awards. Yelpy was Yelp Employee. And we recognized people for quirky, funny things that they did around the office. So one of them was like best dressed. Another one was messiest desk. Most moody, that went to the CEO. And then this one, best Polycom voice. So this was pre-Skype. Polycom is one of those conference line things where that you talk into. Anyway, this is one of our awards. Yes, Zendesk, which is a customer support tool, also connects their employees to the greater community. They volunteered thousands of hours at nonprofits last year within their own cities. This is them actually at a school reading with kids. And obviously, there's a bonding experience with the Zendesk employees when they're partaking in these things together. Another thing that's pretty fantastic is when you can get the employees to recognize each other. So that feedback isn't just coming from leadership. At Shopify, they actually their labs team produced this thing called a unicorn. And what it allows them to do is send a compliment, basically, to somebody else in the organization. So like, hey, Victor, that product that you launched was super awesome. Thanks so much. I use it every day. Victor then would get these credits. And when you amass credits, you can actually use them to shop on the platform. So those dollars are real. It's kind of strange, but I like it. Yes. And then we also think about space when we think about culture. So Mashable did an interview with a bunch of startups in Silicon Valley and interviewed all the employees and asked them what sort of they liked about their office spaces. And it's not surprising. Everybody liked these open floor plans with kind of quirky little conference rooms instead of cramped little cubicles. And cozy seatings, big lounge areas, dogs, snacks, espresso machines, predictable stuff. But spaces that are conducive to sort of group activities and conversation. I think what we need to remember here is that we shouldn't play the perks war. Like one company can get an espresso machine, somebody else is going to get a La Marzocco. Ooh, your espresso machine means nothing now. There was a while where everyone thought we're going to get good engineers if we have ping pong tables and dogs. Like, if an engineer is joining your company because they can bring their dog to work, I don't think that engineer is going to work very hard for you. And I know this is counter to what Peter said, but I'm very, very opinionated about this topic. Don't play the perks war. You want people to be really motivated, not by how comfortable their time is going to be with you, by how much they're going to make an impact. Yes. You guys get the picture. All right. So say we're growing. Say now you're the market leader, right? You've taken over the world. The company keeps scaling. The support queue keeps piling up. You just need workhorses to kind of do one particular function. And there are so many people. The problem here is that, as employee numbers increase, process and bureaucracy also increase. There's just multiple layers. And to get anything done, you need all of these people's approval. And that's fine. Things are a little bit slower. But really, I think the core problem is that freedom decreases. And without freedom, how can people be creative and innovative? So you're stuck, right? You're this behemoth organization, and you might be at the top of the market now, but what if some competitor comes in and pulls a fast one on you, and then you go, okay, guys, let's get it together. Come on, we need to come up with something new, and everyone's kind of mired by the system. Your hands are tied. Yeah, it's a bummer. And actually, if you go into the design studio at Airbnb, there's this black poster board on the wall and a little hand-doodled note, and it's just a knife. And next to the knife, it says the words Airbnb killer. And what they do is they have exercises where they all go in there and they stare at the wall and they go, what's going to happen? What are competitors going to do to make us obsolete? And we're going to do that first. So they have just a bunch of prototypes of what Airbnb is going to look like in the future. And all of these sort of harbingers of doom were from the employees themselves. So it's kind of a cool team building exercise to have them map out their end and then hedge against that. That's a cool one. Yes. So there's some gamers. You guys probably know PopCap. So PopCap in 2009, it's a mobile game company. They got an offer to be acquired for $950 million. That's pretty exciting. It was all in cash. It was from Zynga, who had an impending IPO. And so this could have been, sort of tremendously financially promising for them. But they said no. They said no. Most entrepreneurs would look at that $950 million and go like, yes, please, let's do this. Where do I sign? And they said no. Well, why? I guess the word around town was that Zynga had this bad reputation for kind of hard-driving leadership and really fierce internal competition. And actually, I think worse than that, as they were nearing IPO, they started rescinding employees' shares. So people that hadn't fully vested, they were like, yeah, we're going to take those back. Sorry about that. And employees were like, wait a minute, what? You gave me that offer. Tough luck. So the PopCap founders caught wind of this, and they were like, we are not subjecting our employees to that. And instead, they actually accepted a rival offer for $750 million, $200 million less, plus an earnout of $500 million from EA, which also has a notoriously bad culture, but I guess not as bad. And the earnout didn't look very likely. I mean, there were really aggressive targets, so they were really taking a much lesser offer. And the co-founder basically explained it by saying, like, I didn't really care how much money we made. What I really cared about is making sure that the company is going to be around and still an exciting place to work in 10 or 15 years. So they found a synergistic fit with the culture of EA, and they took it. And I think that's just one example of the many business cases that illustrates how culture not only influences the sort of behaviors and dynamics within an organization, but also seeps into the outside world and can have really real consequences when the perception is negative. Cool. So we've talked a lot about culture. How do we know it's working? Like, how do you know when you have a good one? We said that, yeah, everyone's doing their best work. Awesome. Will they always be? Are there ups and downs? Absolutely. So there's this product called Culture Amp. And what it does is allows you to gather feedback through surveys about your employees' happiness and productivity. And it's pretty cool because you can do it at different stages of your employee life cycle, right? So when people are first onboarding, actually even when you're recruiting them, onboarding, after they've been there for a couple of years, you can do event-based triggers. It's kind of awesome. And it also lets you gather effectiveness about managers. And they've got amazing clients. I mean, Square and Pinterest and Adobe. So if you're thinking about ways to figure out if your team is happy, check out Culture Amp. But if you ask me, the best one is referrals, employee referrals. So ask your payroll person or look in your books and see how much you're shelling out to your employees for bringing on their friends and family. And if that number's significant, then you're on the right track. Good job. So by communicating your vision and values, you're going to attract smart, passionate people. By giving them autonomy, this will promote innovation, which will help you stay ahead of the market. A people-first culture provides the foundation. So when you guys go forth and develop your own companies, remember, cultures are not built in a day. They're definitely not built in a happy hour. It takes commitment over time. Ask me any questions that you might have about it on Twitter. Thank you so much for being here today.
On.